everybody in Beverly. This is George at Large. Today we're going to take a quick trip across Canada. Many years ago I had to meet some relatives in Boston, and I was living in northwest Montana. So I hitchhiked up to Cranston, British Columbia, which is a nice little town, and there's a big Indian population up near there. And then I hitchhiked east. So when I hitchhiked, I always had a sign that said where I was going. So you might grab a long distance driver, will pick you up and help with the driving. So I get out on the highway. I think I was about 21 at the time. I had pretty long hair and had the usual backpack and walking stick, and hitchhiking in the early 70s wasn't too bad. The Vietnam War was wrapping up. A lot of people were being more friendly to people with long hair because the Vietnam War was such an issue that a lot of the people that normally wouldn't pick you up because you had long hair or a hippie, as they assumed, they started picking you up and they started being more friendly. That was very noticeable because I did a lot of hitchhiking in my 20s. So you get out of British Columbia, and Banff National Park is just north of Glacier National Park, which was basically my backyard in Montana. And Banff National Park is well worth the drive to get up there and check it out. And I'm hitchhiking through there. There's a lot of nice small mountain towns in there. The Canadian highway is only 2 lanes wide, and in some places there's no shoulders. You pretty much have to stay in the middle of the road in some spots. But after you get out of Alberta, you get into Saskatchewan, which is basically like North and South Dakota. It's all prairie. It's all wheat fields and sunflower fields for miles and miles. So you continue going east. I'm getting pretty good rides out of people, and I get to Moose Jaw, which is in the middle of Saskatchewan. And as you're rolling through there, there's nothing really to see other than the vastness of the country. So that was rolling along pretty good, and when you get past that and you're kind of north of Minnesota, then the highway dips down into the Great Lakes area, and that becomes a whole different part of the country. You've got miles and miles of trees along the lakes, and I did stop at Kilbear National Park in Canada, and I spent a couple of days there kicking around because a woman and her boyfriend who tended bar in Kalispell, Montana, lived there, and so I spent a couple of days. They actually had their own island in the Great Lakes, so that was pretty cool. And then I hit the road again. And another part of Canada that was pretty awesome was a town which I can't remember the name of it, but the town was built amongst all of these massive boulders that had been dropped there by glaciers back in the day. And so they would build part of a building right onto one of the boulders. And so we went through town at about 5 a.m., and it's the middle of summer, so it was bright daylight. And it was just an amazing, amazing thing to see how this town was nestled right in amongst all these boulders. And I'm talking boulders that are huge, as big as like a 2-story building. And then small ones too, the size of a Volkswagen. So we didn't stay there. We kind of detoured around a little bit. And finally I get a ride with a German light bulb engineer. Now, this guy had one of those little mini Honda Civics. They were kind of one of the first Japanese cars to make it here. And it was small, but he fitted me in there. And then we started driving along. And he kind of started talking about light bulb engineering, which I knew nothing about, but it was his thing in his car. And he was playing classical music, which I really hadn't developed an ear for it yet, so I was getting pretty bored. And then he decided to be an even bigger jerk by telling me that I was too much weight and he was losing gas mileage. Now, I don't know if this guy just liked to be passive aggressive or what, but how do you answer that? Stop and let me out? Well, I don't want to do that because I'm trying to get somewhere. So we're going along, and he says, do you mind doing a little detour? And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, there's an Army base up here that I used to be in back like 5 years ago. And I said, okay. And he says, well, it's a German Army base. And I said, really? And I said, I lived in Germany when I was a kid. I lived in Baumholder, Germany for a couple of years. And he says, okay, we'll give it a try. So he actually talks us past the guard gate, and he gets us onto the base. His CO was still stationed there. So we get to the canteen, and I, at the time, I'm 20 or 21, I don't remember exactly, but I had long hair past my shoulders, and so I'm basically your typical American hippie. And all these German soldiers, none of them spoke any English. I don't remember any German. And they all wanted pot. They all wanted marijuana. And they figured I must have some because I'm an American hippie. And I'm hitchhiking in a foreign country, so I have nothing on me, not even any rolling papers or anything like that. And I have to keep telling them no, and they're offering me parts of their uniform. They're offering me German canteens, all kinds of hats and stuff and pins, but I didn't have anything for them. But we did all drink some beer, and so that was pretty cool. And let's see, American beer at the time was 3.2% alcohol, and that's all I had ever drank. The German beer that we had was 6%. So I didn't know any better. And I drank 3 of those, and we jump off the base into his car. I'm getting pretty drunk as a skunk, and he is too, and he shouldn't be driving. We get about 2 miles up the road, and he's letting me out. He says, okay, I'm gonna find a hotel. I'm gonna let you out here. And I mean, the guy was a jerk, so I didn't mind getting away from him. He was very condescending. So anyhow, he lets me out. I'm still in the prairie near Winnipeg. Let's see, is that Ontario? No. Saskatchewan, no, we went through there. I don't remember where Winnipeg is in Canada. Anyhow, it doesn't matter. So he lets me out, and I'm staggering. So I staggered out into the middle of a field about a quarter of a mile and just went ahead and made camp and just slept it off. And I stayed there overnight, got back out on the highway, had my sign. A guy who was actually going to New York City picked me up, and we shared driving for about 900 miles maybe. Anyhow, it was a great ride, and I literally went across the whole of Canada in 3.5 days. So outside of Montreal, he let me off to do something in Montreal, and then down to Detroit, and then down to New York. But he lets me out in Montreal, and I'm on the highway. There's overleafs, there's factories, there's buildings everywhere. It's a city, and it's outside of Montreal. So, hitchhiker's dream. A little red convertible with a young, attractive blonde, not blonde, but a brunette, pulled over and was giving me a ride. So it's like, wait, this just doesn't happen. This is ridiculous. It's never happened. But I was dog tired and exhausted. And she says, go ahead and get in. Where are you going? I said, Boston. And she says, well, I'm just going to Montreal. And we start chatting. And she says, well, look, I'm going to go to my boyfriend's place in Montreal. Why don't you stay there for a couple of days and clean up and enjoy Montreal? And I said, okay, that's great. And of course, everything was copacetic and benign, and nothing happened. There was no sexuality or anything. They were just being nice people. So that was great. So I spent a day and a half in Montreal. Half of it I slept. That's why it was only a day and a half of being active. But I did sit in a sidewalk cafe, and I did have coffee and a baguette. So that was as close to getting to France as I did when I was a kid. I actually was in Paris, France when I was like 9 years old. But anyhow, so a day and a half in Montreal. We all went to Ottawa one night, and we hit a club, and were listening to some bands. And then, so that really nice people. And her boyfriend ran me back out to the highway. And I got another ride that got me all the way down to Burlington, Vermont. Crossing the border in those days was just like, hi, how you doing? Here's my driver's license, and off you go. So I get down out of that area, and it takes me maybe another 12 hours to get all the way to Boston. And that was the eastbound trip across Canada. And the German Army base is kind of the main part of the story. That was pretty funny. And you wouldn't think there'd be a German Army base in the middle of Canada, but I guess they have to train on open fields somewhere. I don't remember what kind of army they were. Were they infantrymen, or was it a tank base so they could drive tanks around out in the prairies? I never found out any of that stuff. It was just interesting that there was a German Army base in the middle of Canada. So that's going to be about it. I still want to remind all the art students at the art college to start getting out on the sidewalks with your sketch pads, or your easels, and even some of your artwork. Try to get the school to get one of the sidewalk permits that the city issues, and you can be under the umbrella of that. It's only $100 a year. I'm sure they can scrape that together, and maybe they will allow 3 or 4 students to be under that permit. I'm set up every Saturday across the street from the Atomic Cafe if the weather's good. And stop by and see me, and I'll show you the permit and tell you how easy it is to get one. And all of you art students should, get out here and make yourselves known. I know a lot of you are young, and the confidence thing is something, but there's a lot of nice people that'll come up and say hi. They might want to sit for a sketch. You could do some of the caricature sketching if you want to do a little comedy out there. But I'd like to see more art students out on the street, proving that Beverly is a nice art town and a great place to visit and walk around and see the shops. Okay, that's it. The next time I come on, I'm going to do the east to westbound side of that hitchhiking trip. And then at another time, I'll do a trip up to Alaska that I did all the way up through Banff National Park and the whole of British Columbia. Okay, everybody, enjoy your weekend, and I will catch you again soon. Thank you.